Verma. So I'm again with you. Earlier we swept out the complete chapter number 1 in business studies, that was nature and significance of management. Now it's time to start the another chapter, that is principles of management. So in today's session we are going to cover concept of principles of management, features, or it is called nature of principles of management, importance, or it is called significance of principles of management, right? Very first, let's talk about concept of principles of management. When we say concept, so concept includes meaning, definition, both, right? So before principle, I want to compare here with this another term. These two terms are having same pronunciation, but in meaning they differ a lot. This is the principal enlarged PAL, that is the principal in your school, the head of all the teachers, who is the administrative head in your school. He is known as principal. Okay, otherwise a principal is the head of something. If somebody is in mainstream, that can be called principal. Fine. So we are not talking about this principal here. Okay, we are going to talk about this principal, which having a spelling PLE, right? Why I am differentiating it before starting? Because so often students commit this mistake even after telling them repeatedly. Okay, because if you write PAL principle instead of PLE principle, then the meaning is entirely changed. That is another matter, that while evaluation so many teachers do not consider it, but you need to be specific. Okay, so when you know the actual meaning, then you should be using the actual and correct word as well. Okay, so always keep it in your mind. So we have to take this principle. Fine. Now let's talk about the meaning of this principle. Principle means any general rule, law, okay, any kind of rule or system or idea that is believed by a person, that is known as principle, and that is followed by so many people. Okay, that can be any idea, that can be any law, that can be any rule. So it is vague in sense. Okay, so that is what the principle. Now we have added after that principles of management. So now you can understand these are the general laws of management, or you can name them general rules of management. Okay, like we did in the first chapter, I would like to remind you about the nature of management when we were discussing it and comparing it with science, art, and profession. Then we were talking about management principles, right? Okay, so these are the same principles which we were talking about in the first chapter. So if you want to understand in simple terms, then you can understand the first chapter was the detailed explanation, and these are the application of those explanation. Fine, because in reality, in practical life, only these principles are applied in the organization. Only then the organization management goes in a smooth manner. Okay, if you really want to teach somebody that how to become an efficient manager, how to become a good manager, how to become a successful manager, then you will have to teach him these principles, so that after application of these principles, he is called successful manager, or he may manage his organization successfully. Understood? Okay, so now let's talk about the meaning of these principles. See, now we are talking about principles of management. Okay, so these are not rules in exact, these are the general guidelines. Okay, these guide the actions of the manager. Okay, manager has to perform various activities. He has to perform all the functions of management, be it planning, organizing, staffing, okay, directing, controlling, and so many other activities. So while performing all those activities, some kind of general laws, rules, regulations are kept in the mind. These are known as principles of management. Or we can say from where these have come. These have been derived after the constant observation and experience of so many management thinkers, scholars, researchers in the field of management. They have done a lot of experiments in actual work situations. They have seen in many organizations, they have conducted various studies, research, and after that they found some kind of common features, common result, okay, common phenomenon happening all around, then they name them principles of management, right? So these have been derived after observation, experience, and experimentation. Okay, these can also be defined as science. That is why we call that management is also known as science, but not exact science. We learn that. Okay, why it is science? Because these principles have developed in the similar way as the science principles have developed. Okay, and we call management as an art as well, because creative application of these principles is known as art. Okay, so we need to understand that. Okay, so these principles in actual what they do, they help managers to take decision. Okay, they guide manager to solve any problem. Okay, they assist the managers to tackle the different kind of new kind of situations which are coming before them, because in organization there are various activities, various problems. Sometimes the employee is having problems, sometimes the machine is having problems, sometimes the unstoppable problems are happening in the environment. So how to tackle with them, for that some kind of guidelines are needed. So these guidelines are known as principles of management. Okay, so now we can define principles of management as general or broad guidelines for decision making and behavior of managers. Fine. So principles of management are general guidelines, broad guide, or you can say broad guidelines, which guide a manager to take decision, or they influence the behavior of the manager. All right. So this was all about the meaning and definition of principles of management. Now let's move on. Okay, so one more thing, before knowing the features of principle of management, we need to compare these principles of management with so many other things, because sometimes the confusion is created. So many people understand that why these are known as principle, why these cannot be named as values, why these are not known as management techniques. Okay, and what is the difference between management principles and pure science? Okay, so we need to have comparison to have comprehensive understanding on the principles of management. And from exam point of view also it is important. Sometimes it is asked in the questions that if you just compare management principles with the science principle, or with the values, or the management techniques. All right, so we need to have the comparison with them. Okay, so before going further, we need to know the comparison. So very first we are comparing principles of management with pure science, then we compare them with values, and then at last we compare them with management techniques. Okay, but we'll be using the same basis. Very first base is their meaning, another is nature, then formation, and then relation with environment. So very first let's talk about meaning of principle of management. As we have already learned, principles of management are the general guidelines, okay, for taking decisions and influencing the behavior of the manager. Okay, so these are what? General guideline. And what is the pure science? Pure science is what? Universally valid truth which can be verified anytime. All right, these are the universal truth which are valid, universally valid. Now let's talk about nature. We have already understood this point, right? When we were comparing management as science, then we came to know about it. Okay, now let's talk about nature. So if you see the nature, then management principles are flexible and pure science principles are rigid. What does it mean? Rigid means you cannot change them. You cannot change the principles of pure science as per the situations, as per your comfortability, as per the requirement. Okay, but the principles of management are flexible. These can be changed, modification can be done as per the requirement, as per the situations. Okay, because different organizations work in different field, and they are differently influenced by the activities happening in the business environment. Okay, now formation. So these have been developed from observation, and experimentation. It is similar here. Okay, because science principles have also undergone with observation experimentation, but there is a bit difference here. These principles have been experimented in labs, okay, and these principles have been experimented in actual work situations, being in any organization, in happening of the work environment, right? Now let's talk about relation with environment. So these actually what happen, keep changing as per the environment, and these do not change. Like I told you that business organization works in a business environment. So whatever is happening in the environment, our business is affected by that, either positively or negatively. Okay, so what happens, principles of management are having the nature dynamic. Okay, so these keep on changing as per the environment changes, because one more reason behind is that because these are related to human behavior. Okay, because principles will be applied only on human beings, they are actually going to perform. Okay, and the human behavior is unpredictable, that keeps on changing. That is why principles of management also keep on changing. And but here these principles do not apply on human behavior. These are applied on the physical objects and natural things. So that is why these do not change. So that was the comparison between principles of management and principle of pure science. Now we are going to compare principles of management with values. Okay, see, we are going to compare the values with the principle of management on the same basis. Meaning, the same meaning is there. Now let's know the meaning of values. Values are what? Norms of individual to behave in a society. Okay, values are what? These are the general norms for individuals to behave in a society. I give you the example for that. When you were small and any guests were coming to your home, then your parents must have taught you that you need to greet them, you have to say hello to them, you have to touch feet of them. Okay, so this is what value. Fine, this value is different in different societies. We'll come to that point when the basis comes here, but here you understand. So this kind of value is given, and that is practiced in some society. Okay, but management principles are guidelines. Now let's talk about nature. These are flexible, or you can say technical in nature, but these are what? Ethical. What is the meaning of ethical? Ethical means these are the norms of good behavior or bad behavior. Okay, so if you are talking about ethical, it means we are talking about etiquettes, good behavior, sense of right. Okay, now formation, as we have discussed that these have been formed due to observation experience, and these have been developed in so these values have been developed due to common practice. Okay, like I gave you the example of greeting. So that kind of common practice has been going on in your family. Okay, because your parents are teaching you that. Why? Because their parents taught them so. Okay, and everywhere that is being taught. So that is what the common practice. Okay, now compare it, relation with environment change, very nominal, as they are different in different parts of society. Okay, like I was going to tell you, the same point has come. These generally do not change with the pace of environment changes. Why? Because these are different in the different societies. Like in your families, it has been taught that you should touch feet. Okay, maybe possible that there is some other family who is practicing another religion, and they have not taught their children to touch feet. They have taught their children to bend down. Okay, they have taught their children to shake hand. So that can be different, or we can compare Indian culture or Western culture here. In Western culture, we are not having the same values as we are having in Indian culture, right? So that is what the difference. So that's why these do not change as with the pace of the environment changes. The very nominal changes come because these are very much different and these are not affected by that. Okay, so this was the comparison between principles of management and values. Now we are going to compare principles of management with the management techniques. So now let's compare principles of management with management techniques. So we are having the same basis. These are the general guidelines and these are what procedures. These are the procedures to be followed in a series. Fine, these are the techniques. Okay, and if we are talking about the nature, so the same nature is there. These are also flexible. These can also be modified. And if we talk about the formation, so these have been developed after constant thinking and creativity. I tell you that any kind of technique is developed when you think over it, when you try to do something different, when you try to focus on your creative part, then you come with another technique. Okay, then you invent a new technique. So technique comes after constant thinking and creativity. All right, and if we talk about relation with environment, so a few technique changes, okay, as per the requirement, and some of them remain static because they do not have change. These are common everywhere. So this was the comparison between principles of management and management techniques. So after comparing principles of management with pure science, with values and with management techniques, we can clearly say the same, that these are the general and broad guidelines which help a manager to take decisions and influence the behavior also of that. Okay, now let's move on. So now let's talk about features, or we call it nature, or we call it characteristics of principles of management. The question in the exam either come by name of features of principles of management, or nature of principles of management, or characteristics of principles of management. You will have to remember these three are the common terms here for principles of management. Not everywhere, but here it is common. All right. Okay, so there are few features. So to remember all the features in a single go, I have made a code like we all the time do, and you know very well that we make a bit funny code so that leaves impression in your mind for longer period and you can easily remember it. So let's see what is the code today I have prepared. So this is what the code. Underground cat is pining for bitter cucumber. Okay, you find it must be funny. Okay, so you have to imagine there is some cat which is underground sitting, and it is pining, okay, deliberately wanting to have bitter cucumber. Funny situation, imagine it. Okay, now let's take first letter of these and then we form the features. So these are the 7 features of principles of management: universal applicability, general guidelines, cause and effect relationship, formed by practice and experimentation, flexible, mainly behavioral, and contingent. Okay, you can easily remember these all together by this code. Now let's understand the meaning of these one by one.